Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the ActiveReports 15 preview. This is one of our first preview webinars that we've done, and I hope that it is something that everybody will benefit from, everybody will enjoy. Taking a look at the features that will be coming out in ActiveReports 15. Getting started, let's go ahead and continue. Getting started with the webinar. My name is Mateen Firoz. I am the product manager for ActiveReports. I've been working with the Microsoft stack for the last 10 years, so including ASP.NET, WinForms, WPF, UWP, Silverlight, and even LightSwitch to some extent. So I've been working with Grape City for most of that time, and been working with ActiveReports, managing the product for the last few years, for the last 3 or 4 years. I hope to present some things that will be of benefit to you guys in this webinar. So let's get to our agenda, what we're going to be doing today. So the first thing I am going to do is quickly give an overview of ActiveReports. We're going to have a couple of short, quick polls just to sort of get a gauge of the audience. And then we're going to talk about the V15 features. So specifically, we're going to start with .NET 5 support in ActiveReports 15. We're going to talk about a new setting for the reports page height property. And this is specific to RDL reports. And then the rest of the features will be specific to our end user report designer for web. So we'll talk about some of these features that include an enhanced API, an easy and quick way to create tables within your reports, and Tablix wizard that we have created just to make these pivot table creations much simpler and much easier for you guys. And for your end users. And then the other 2 features are a bit more advanced, so creating advanced parameter and custom parameter panels, as well as advanced filtering. So we'll talk about a little bit of these features, we'll do a little bit of demos, and we'll end with a question and answer session. Just to sort of let you know that if you have questions throughout the presentation, throughout this demo, feel free to send them to us. So GoToWebinar has a questions section within its UI. If you type in your questions there, we will be able to answer those questions. I actually have a couple of my colleagues on the call with me, so on this meeting. Evan Warren and Tyler Barlock, both of them work with ActiveReports and they have extensive knowledge of the product. So while I'm going through the presentation, they'll be monitoring the questions. And answering the questions. Anything that we have left over, if we have time, we will go ahead and answer towards the end of the session. Again, if there are any questions or anything along the lines, feel free to send them to us, and we'll go ahead and answer them as they come in. Getting started with ActiveReports, just give a quick overview of what ActiveReports is, as I'm sure we might have some folks that are new to ActiveReports and not very familiar with ActiveReports at all. So ActiveReports as a product started out, paving the way. It has been a pioneering product in the reporting industry for a long time. It started with, the COM versions, and then the .NET version. We also have a JS version of ActiveReports. So back in 1998, when it first started, we were the first ones to essentially to have, outside of Microsoft, to have an integrated report designer within Visual Studio. ActiveReports was also the first one to have an end user report designer for, ad hoc reporting. Today, we have a huge team dedicated specifically to ActiveReports and the ActiveReports JS product. So there's over 60 team members. So that includes developers, that includes the support, and that includes sales and marketing. We have this group essentially just throughout the world that's dedicated specifically to ActiveReports, as opposed to having to deal with a bunch of other products along with ActiveReports. So we are solely focused on ActiveReports and meeting the needs of our customers and clientele, and making sure that you guys are taken care of and that you have what you need to do your jobs and to achieve a lot more efficiency quickly. And that is essentially the theme of this release as well, to help you to achieve more quickly. And so these features that we have introduced in this release are geared towards that goal. So from the extensible APIs that we have for the end user report designer, the multiple report types, for creating different types of reports, essentially for whatever business needs you might have. We'll talk a little bit about these report types later on, but the rich controls, the tons of export formats from PDF and Word and Excel and HTML and everything else in between, to the user-friendly designers. All of this is done to help you essentially get your job done quickly, and to create these amazing applications with reporting built into them. So all of this, including a bunch of features that make ActiveReports stand out among its competition. Just a quick note, the last point here is we have a promotion running this month, actually until the end of the month, for ActiveReports. So it's about 40% off, up to 40% off of ActiveReports. You can check our website for the specific details and what's included, and the pricing and everything like that. But definitely take a look at all that is included. So with that said, let me go ahead and start a quick poll. So I just wanted to sort of get an understanding of what our users are like, essentially the attendees here, their experience level with ActiveReports. This will essentially just help me to go, gauge how deep I can go with this presentation. So far it looks like we'll give a couple more minutes for everybody else to vote in, but it looks like the majority of our users are expert users, so 2 years and over, 2 years or more experience. Okay. I think that's pretty much good. There we go. We have about 90% of the vote. Let me go ahead and close this. So if you look, 73% of the users essentially have been using ActiveReports for 2 years or more. So I think during the presentation, then we can go through some of the more some of the features in a little more detail, and sort of if there are any questions, anything like that, for the new users or somebody who's not as familiar, again, feel free to ask the questions and we will definitely answer those questions as we progress. So let me go ahead and hide that poll and continue with our presentation here. So the first feature that we have that we'll be discussing is .NET 5 support. So .NET 5 support is essentially, .NET 5 is Microsoft's next major release, essentially after .NET Core. If you remember, .NET Core was a massive change from .NET Framework to a whole new framework, which was the .NET Core 2, and then 2.1, and then 3 and 3.1. And then 3.1 offers long-term support. So it's essentially going to be supported for about 3 years, I believe. And then .NET Core came out in November of this year. .NET 5, sorry. .NET 5 came out in November of this year. Now, while the migration from .NET Framework to .NET Core was a huge undertaking, but it was definitely worth it for the majority of the people, I would say, just because of the value that was included in it, and the benefit that it brought. .NET 5, migrating from .NET Core 3.1 to .NET 5 is not as a massive change, meaning that migrating from .NET 3.1, Core 3.1 to .NET 5 is not a huge undertaking, the upgrade, as far as the upgrade and changes are concerned, but the benefit is definitely there. So there's going to be a lot of improvements, including security and efficiency and a bunch of new features that are not included in .NET Core 3.1 that are included in .NET Core 5, .NET 5 rather. Now, as I mentioned, 3.1 was a long-term support. .NET 5 is not. The next release to come, .NET 6, is a long-term support. So again, that will offer about 3 years of support from Microsoft. Now, that means that .NET 5 is more of a preparatory release. So it's paving the way essentially for .NET 6 to come out in November of next year. And that is going to be the schedule from Microsoft moving forward, that it will be basically November of every year, there will be a major release to their .NET framework. So while .NET 5, again, is not a long-term support release, .NET 6 will be. Now, the question is, do you upgrade your existing applications? Do you upgrade your existing applications, or what do you do with .NET 5, or stay with what you have currently, especially if you have .NET framework applications? So the approach that I usually suggest is that if you're starting a new project, and this is something that Microsoft suggests and other experts have suggested as well, is that if you're starting a new project, definitely start using .NET 5. You'll benefit a lot from the features and the efficiency, but at the same time, you will also see a lot of improvements that will come, and they will come fast, and they will pile up in .NET 5. Because again, they are preparing for another major release of .NET 6. So these features will continue to come and pile up in .NET 5, and you will want to benefit from those features that are included in .NET 5. Now, if you have a .NET Core 3.1 application, again, the migration or the upgrade process is not as intrusive or as extensive as it was from migrating from .NET Framework to .NET Core, but there are some things that you need to take account of. For example, there are some breaking changes that might affect your code, and all of this is documented in Microsoft's websites and their blog posts, the release blog posts. So definitely take that into consideration. But again, the improvements from .NET Core 3.1 to .NET 5 are something to consider, weigh in and consider taking advantage of. But if you have, on the other hand, if you have a .NET Framework application, again, weigh the pros and cons, weigh the benefits over the investment that you will need to make in migrating that application. If it is a mature application, you might consider leaving it in Framework, considering again the investment and the benefits and the future of that application. But just know that .NET Framework is not going away. .NET Framework will continue to be supported as long as Windows is supported. So your applications in .NET Framework will continue to run, will continue to work, and there won't be any issues in that regard. It's just that any new features that Microsoft puts out for their .NET Framework is going to be in .NET 5 and beyond, not in .NET Framework. So with that said, let's quickly go to what is supported from ActiveReports side with .NET 5. So page and RDL reports definitely supported. Section reports, since we have experts on the call, section reports have two flavors. One is an XML-based and one is a code-based. XML-based is supported. The code-based, there is a bug within, not a bug, I guess, a limitation of the .NET Framework that doesn't allow custom integrated designers. So for code-based reports, there isn't the integrated designer is not going to show up in Visual Studio. So the workaround that is being used is to link a .NET 4.62 project to your .NET 5 project. So you would essentially design your reports within that linked project and then migrate or import those excuse me, files, those designed files, to your .NET 5 project. Now, that's basically it. So everything else works. So the exports and the printing and everything works in .NET 5 from an ActiveReports side. One thing I guess I should mention that when it comes to .NET 5, you need Visual Studio 16.8 or newer. So that needs to be updated to get .NET 5 installed on your machine. With that said, we're going to go ahead and continue to our next feature, to our next feature that we included in this release, and this is the auto page height setting. So if you imagine if you wanted to print a a receipt, like in this image here, a receipt on a scroll of paper, it was possible to do that before with page or with RDL reports specifically. Sorry. You'd required some calculations. So you needed to be calculated, the page height needed to be calculated at runtime, essentially. So it's definitely possible, just required some calculations. But now we've created this setting, the auto property, auto setting property for the page size height property. So if you set the page size height to auto, this will enable the report's height to be calculated at runtime automatically. And again, this is specific to RDL reports, not to page reports. And this is obvious, this is obvious for a reason. Page reports are specific to a specific layout, right? So for page reports, you essentially have, a specific layout of a page, a specific size of a page, whether that's letter or something else. So it doesn't fit with, printing on a scroll of paper where the height can be dynamic, or the height of the report can be dynamic. So it doesn't fit with the page report, but it's specific to RDL reports. It's intended for printing purposes, obviously, for printing receipts on scrolls of paper, but it can also be used preview, and in PDF export as well. So to sort of give you an example of this property, let me bring out one of our designers. So I have our end user designer here. This is one of our end user designers, essentially. So we have a report created here. It's a simple table. It has 4 columns. The item that was purchased, the quantity that was purchased, the unit that was purchased, and the total for that purchase, essentially. That's basically it. All right, so if we preview this report, we see that the report shows, but it has, it's broken down into pages because the page size is 11. The height is 11. So now if we change this to auto and preview it, you can see that it's all one paper. So it works not only in preview but print and PDF export as well. So it's a very useful feature, for printing, like I said, in these types of scroll printers. So it makes these print jobs of variable length reports much simpler and much easier to handle. With that said, let's continue on to our next feature. So let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the features. And these features are, again, as I mentioned, particular to the end user report designer for web. So let's get an understanding of what the end user report designer for web is when it comes to ActiveReports. So ActiveReports has 2 end user report designer components. The first one that I just showed you, that was a desktop application. So excuse me, that was a desktop application. It was obviously WinForms. Now that supports page, RDL, and section reports. The web-based end user report designer is a JavaScript-based application, JavaScript-based component rather, and that supports page and RDL report types. Both of these end user report designers, they allow your end users to create ad hoc reports, whether it's in your desktop application or on the browser. So imagine, if your end user needed a change implemented in the layout of a report, they would have to call you or contact you somehow, and you would implement the change and then, redeploy it to your end users. But giving them this application, it just makes the whole process easier, where they can make the changes themselves, or they can create their own reports however they wish. And if you notice, we've made the UI a lot more intuitive, so it's easy to use essentially. Let's go ahead and continue. So the first feature for the end user report designer for web is the enhanced APIs. So when it comes to our end user report designers, this is one of the many things I should say, that sets ActiveReports above our competition. Because we are customizable, we are localizable, and it's much easier to use our controls and our components. Excuse me. So with previous versions of ActiveReports, these designers have always been customizable and localizable. So when it came to the web-based end user report designer, you could add the save button, you could add the save as button, so that you could prevent your end users from overwriting existing reports. You could give them a file menu to choose, templates and whatnot, a preview button, a data source panel, and a data set picker, so they can choose their data sets. So these were all modules in previous releases. So you had the option to choose whichever modules you wanted to show in your web designer and your web-based report designer. But now all of these are much easier to use, just because of the APIs that we've enhanced. So pretty much all of these, except for the preview reports. The preview reports, it requires a little bit more code, but everything else is just essentially one line of code. And again, customization, rather localization, is still, an object localization is still something that can be done with all of these designers. Let me bring over a application here. So don't mind this, it says it's an MVC core application. So it was a .NET Core application that I've migrated to .NET 5. So it is a .NET 5 application now. But essentially, it shows you, the customization, the ease of customizing the report designer for web. So just with one line of code, you can add the ability, or give the ability to open reports and save reports, and just save as, and then adding and editing and removing data sets, and same thing with data sources. Excuse me. And you can see the viewer involves a little bit more code, just obviously because it needs to get the the report name and everything else from the designer, and then pass it on to our JS viewer component for preview at design time, rather runtime. Okay, so it's pretty simple to to customize the end user report designer. So all of the pieces are there. So it's definitely possible for you as a developer, or you as the business entity, to decide which one of your users gets access to data sources and data sets, which one gets access to, for example, overwriting a report and or not, just rewriting, appending for example, a date modified text to the name of the report. So all of that APIs are there. The logic just needs to be implemented within your application. So let's go ahead and move along because we're already almost 30 minutes in and we have a lot more to talk about. Okay, so we'll use this application to discuss the next set of features that we will be going over. Now, the next feature that we have is going to be the end user report designer's table creation. So it's so much easier to create a tabular report in ActiveReports 15. Essentially, you can drag and drop an entire data set to create a table out of it, or you can select specific fields from the data set to create a table out of those. When you do that, then you have the ability to move and rearrange columns. Say you wanted the price to show before the quantity per unit column. Just click and drag. That's basically all that would need to be done. Just click and drag the column to the desired location. You can add a specific data field to a specific index within the table. So if you wanted to, for example, add units in stock, in the second index here, the second location, you would just drag that data field from your data set and drop it in that location. So it's very, very easy to create these reports with ActiveReports. And then if you wanted to do grouping, grouping is also the same way. Essentially, you would just drag and drop a field on which you want to group into the grouping panel. So let me go ahead and run my application here. And we're going to take a look at how this table creation takes place. And then we'll talk about the Tablex and we'll talk about some of the other features of ActiveReports as well. So let me bring over my application here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a data set. So this application has, this application already has some data sets built into it. So we will go ahead and select the products data set from our data set picker. So remember, this was one of the options to hide or show for your end users. So we have pre-selected data sets built into this application. And so when we do that, when we select the products data set, all of the products are displayed, or the fields for that data set are displayed. So if I wanted to, like I said, drag the entire data set to the design surface, and a table is created from it. But we can also select a data set from selecting fields. So if I do that, again, a table is created for it. So it's very, very easy to create tables within ActiveReports now. Now, like I mentioned, if we wanted to move some columns around, so we can select one or two columns. If we wanted to select multiple columns, just use a control and click, and we can just do drag and drop, right? So let's move everything back the way it was. Let's resize some things. Okay. The other feature was to drag a field, drag a field into a specific location. So again, like I said, if we wanted to drag units in stock and put it, between product name and quantity per unit, we can do that and put it at that specific spot. But if we wanted to create a blank row, we could do that as well. Blank column, we could do that as well. All right, what else? So now let's go ahead and format this to, let's go to basic mode and currency. There we go. Okay, so if we preview this, it's basically going to show a raw representation of that data, right? So it's just basically a tabular report with the data that is presented. That's it, there's nothing else, right? So what we could do is group. grouping was the next thing that we wanted to sort of rediscuss, that it was a possibility. So to group, again, we can use grouping by category. So drag the group category name from the data set into the group panel right here. Automatically adds the grouping and the grouping, the group header and footer, right? So now if we wanted to, we can select some cells, we can merge them, and then we can select, say, description, right? Let's make this a little bit like that. That's good, I think. Make this a little bit wider, and let us select all of these and left align everything up except for this. I wanted that left align, right align rather. So now if we preview this, it's going to show us that same list but grouped by products, right? So grouped by products. That's basically it. Right, it's very easy to work with tables with this release of ActiveReports. Okay, now let me see what else I wanted to show. Oh yes, one more thing that again, our expert users would notice this as well. That if you notice the syntax, the expression syntax is changed with this release, specifically when it pertains to the web-based report designer. It's much easier to read this syntax. So it's using string interpolation essentially to make reading the expressions a lot easier. And the other thing is, if you notice that at design time, at the properties panel and the design surface, the values match, right? So it's basically the same string in both places. Okay, let's keep going. All right. So again, I'm going a little fast so we can have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers. Now, the next feature that we have is the Tablix wizard. Now, creating a Tablix wizard in Tablix, by the way, is essentially a hybrid of a table and a matrix. So it's essentially an advanced control for creating these advanced matrices. If you hear any noise in the background, that's my cat or my cats, so please ignore them. Now, sometimes creating these advanced matrices is not the easiest thing. So with this release, we introduced this very intuitive and user-friendly wizard. So with this wizard, you could just a few clicks, you can create some complex matrices with multi-level groupings on the header, on the column and the rows. So, excuse me, we'll show this as we continue the demo portion of the demo later on, of this webinar later on. So obviously it supports drag and drop, so you can drag fields from the dataset panel on the left to column and group and values sections. Another neat thing is that when it came to designing the UI of this wizard, we had two things in mind. The first thing is to provide a nostalgic familiarity. So the UI is basically made to look like the Office and Microsoft Office essentially. So it provides that familiarity, so to ease that learning curve that there might be with a new product or a new feature. And the second thing is that we wanted to provide ease of use. So a lot of the features that we included in this wizard were aimed at that. So one of these is the search field here. So imagine if you might have a data set with 30 or 40 or 50 fields. So just scrolling through the list is going to be difficult. So it's easier to just type in the name of the field in the search box, and it filters out based on what you type. The other thing that we incorporated here is that when you add one of your fields to the values, it automatically adds the aggregation, the appropriate aggregation, I should say. So if it's a string value, it's going to maybe add a count. If it's similarly, if it's a date value, it might add a count. If it is a integer or a float, then it's going to sum it up. So, you know, it automatically adds the appropriate value as long as the data types are mentioned, is known essentially within the data set. The second, or the other thing is that sometimes you might not use a data set. I'm sorry, sometimes you might not use the Tablix wizard to modify, you know, areas of the Tablix. You might have some, you know, minor changes that you can do at design surface. But when you launch the Tablix wizard later on, it will stay in sync with the changes that are made on the design surface, and vice versa. The design surface will stay in sync with the wizard, and the wizard with the design surface. So let's go ahead and bring up our designer again. So what I am going to do is, excuse me. Let's see. Okay, let's go ahead and create a new report. So the first thing that I'm going to do is change the, actually, that was pretty good. So if we go to report, by the way, the report menu, we can change the theme. So Cosmo is pretty good. What I'm going to do first thing is change the page orientation to landscape. And then what I'm going to do is add a data set. So let's see, actually I think I have a file for this. So yeah, food sales, there we go. Okay, so food sales, let's go ahead and pick the theme again. So Cosmo theme, we already have a data set entered here. So what we're going to do is just double click the Tablix control and automatically you have the Tablix wizard pop up. So this food sales data set essentially gives us a list of sales based on a region, a city within a region, and then, you know, dates, obviously. And then there's also a category of products, the product itself, and how much of that product was ordered, essentially. You know, the quantity and the unit price and the total price. So that's basically the data set that we're going to use. We're going to essentially have a sales report that is based on region and city and the dates, so the year, the month, and the order date. So that's what we're going to do with this data set. So to create the report, I'm going to add the year field and then group the month under it. And then for the column grouping, let's do region and then city. All right. For the values, let's start off with price. Now you'll notice it gives a count just because this data set does not explicitly define the data type of these fields. So we're going to change that to sum. And if we add quantity, same thing, since it's a number, we're just going to change it to a sum. So that's it. If we click OK, the Tablix is automatically created for us. All right, let's go ahead and preview this report. And I think I didn't change the orientation of this report to landscape. Yep, I did not. But we can see the Tablix is created essentially with the groupings already in place. So the east and the, if we continue on to the next page, the west. Let's go back. Let's change the orientation again to landscape. And let's change some things here. So the swap feature obviously swaps these, their row and column groups. So they're swapped and the order is kept the same. The values as rows, essentially, it presents these values as part of the rows. So if I turn this on, the layout of the Tablix changes. So again, if I preview this, you will see a bit of a different layout, more of a tabular kind of a layout, as opposed to a matrix type. But automatically we see that, you know, towards the beginning of the year, San Diego didn't have many sales, so it does definitely provide another insight to our data. So if we notice another thing here, we can add totals and subtotals for our groups. Under organization, we have a few other things. So we can add the drill down functionality. So if we check this box and check this box, essentially what that's going to do is allow the drill down functionality. So it's going to give us an overview, a high level overview of our data grouped by the column and by rows with the aggregates from the price and quantity. So that's gonna give us this type of a report. So let's take a look at how this is rendered. So again, we have the plus icon that we can drill down into, based on the groupings. And one more thing within this that I wanted to show very quickly is under organization is this stepped row groups. What this does essentially is the child grouping in the rows essentially is going to be brought down under the parent group. So let's take a look. So when we click OK, you see year and month are now on top of each other, right? So they're basically nested in that way. So when we preview it, it looks a lot more like, if you look at, if you remember Excel's pivot, it looks a lot more like Excel's pivot. Now we could always, change the formatting to currency and everything else. That's the wrong formatting. But all of that is available in this wizard. So again, due to time, I can't go too much deeper, but let's keep going into the next feature, which is an advanced parameters panel. So imagine if you have a, if you have a report, and obviously reports nowadays, everybody uses parameters, right? So, but a lot of the times these parameters are not presented, or the input is not requested in a nice way from the user. So you might ask for a date range and present 2 calendars, right? Instead of 1 calendar that you can that the user can use to select the start and end date, or worse even, to show a text box and have the user input the data or manually enter and put the date there. So there are a lot of these kinds of problems with parameters, and then some of our more power users, they requested something specific. They requested something more advanced that they could use to create custom parameters with prompts and different control types, and to create these hierarchical and tree view like very complex parameter panels. So we created this advanced parameter panel that you can customize to create. So let's quickly go through that. And by the way, before while I'm launching this application again, before I forget, the parameter panel is again customizable. So you are able to hide or show the parameter tab here from your end user. So if you think your end users will be confused by it, then certainly there's APIs available that you can hide the parameter panel altogether. This report, essentially, if we look at the data tab, it has 1 parameter. It just requests or asks the user to for a category. So if we go into the parameters tab, we can have the system automatically generate a parameter for us, a parameter panel for us, or we could do one ourselves. So for this, I am going to select the list parameter. So when we click on this red box here, it will list all of our parameters that are applicable that we would be able to use this control for. So we can select category parameters, because that's the only one there. And then we have the properties panel here that we can, set default values and everything else to it as well. So you can see the design layout, the layout right here, the design surface is a lot like designing a report, right? So you have your controls that you can choose. You have the properties settings that you can set. The bindings are here, binding to a specific available parameter essentially. So that's basically it, right? So there's a bunch of controls that you can choose from. There's headings and plain text and directions that you can give your end users, the report viewers rather, to collect the data. And then there's buttons, obviously, that you can add to with certain actions. So whether that's to reset or clear or to preview. So very, very simple, easy to use, easy to design parameters. But for some users, I can understand it may be a little bit overwhelming. So that's why there is the ability to customize it to show the parameters in a way that you think that users would be able to preview or use. If not, then just you have the ability to hide it altogether. All right. So again, when we select fields, it basically filters the data based on the parameters that are shown here. Okay, let's continue to go since we are running quickly out of time. Okay, the last feature, where is my PowerPoint? The last feature that we have that we'll be talking about is the advanced filters. So similar to parameters, obviously filters are different than parameters, but they have a similar function where they filter the data set essentially. And they also work in conjunction with parameters. So you can create very complex, very complex filter layouts using the and or operators. So I'll show you this layout. We're going to essentially just recreate this layout right here. And again, the UI is designed to simplify this logic, for everyone, whether you're, a technical user, somebody who has a lot of technical knowledge, or a very novice user, or somebody that, is new to ActiveReports, or somebody who is just completely technically not savvy, they'll be able to use it as well. So that was the intention behind this filter panel. Now, this filter can be applied at the dataset level, which would essentially filter the entire data set for the report that is used. So every control within that report will have a filtered data set, or you could have this filter applied on a control level. Say, for example, let's bring back our report here. Say, for example, I might have a chart control here that I don't want the data to be filtered, the whole data to be filtered. I only want the table to be filtered based on the filter specifications, but not the other controls. So in this instance, I don't want the data set filters. I want the control specific filters, right? So if we highlight the control, go to properties, here's the filters, right? For this demo, let's bring up another sales report here. All right. So again, very simple tabular report showing sales data for specific 2 stores, year sales, and the sales amount essentially. So what we could do is quickly select the table, and we're going to filter by the table. All right, we're going to filter by the table. So what we're going to do is add a filter. So let's say we want to add year, and let's expand this a little bit, year of sales. And the year of sales is going to be an expression, basically. And the expression is going to be year of date time dot now. All right. All right, so that's basically the expression for, so it's basically going to take the year, today's year, right? So 2020, filter the data based on that. We're going to add another level to this. So we're going to add a group. We're going to add a group here. And within this group, we're going to add another group. All right. So here we're going to add, let's see, we're going to add store ID. And the second thing that we're going to add is sales. So the store ID, we're going to say this is going to be store 1, and the sales is going to be a parameter. So when we select a parameter, it basically brings us to the parameters panel to create a parameter quickly. So you don't have to go back and forth. All right, so we're going to name it target for store 1 and say store 1 sales, and this is going to be an integer. All right, that's it. And then in here, we're going to add another group, and this is going to be the same thing as the other one. So store ID is going to be store 2, and the sales is going to be similar to that, but it's going to be target for store 2. Store 2 target, and we're going to leave it as an integer. So that's basically it. So now these operators here, all of and any of, these are the and or operators, right? So we can change these. So the first one we're going to leave at all of. The second one we're going to change to any of, and then the other ones are going to be all. So basically, we're going to use the year and if it's store 1, it has to have this target that we're going to give it, and the store 2 is going to have this target. Okay. So that's basically the understanding of this parameter. So now this filter rather, if we preview it, it's going to present us with store 1 sales target. So let's say for store 1, we want to say 50,000. For store 2, we want to say 15,000. So when we preview it, whoops, there's something wrong. When we preview it, it should give us the parameter, rather the filtered data. I'm wondering if I store ID, store 2. Okay, so let's. Okay. Take time.now, that's correct. All right, so any of. And all of store ID is 1, and store sales have to equal to that. And store ID for store 2 and store sales equal to that. Okay, let's try it again with the different values. Those values should work for us. Let's say 5,000 and 10,000. No, okay. So there's something wrong here in the parameters panel, and the filters panel rather. So it should be filtering the data set without a problem on the table level. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to continue with the presentation because we're running short on time. And while we have the question and answer session, I am going to take a look to see what is wrong with this filter. Okay, so very quickly, just a quick second poll here. Just wanted to understand which of these features do you find the most interesting. So quickly give, if you don't mind, answer these questions real quick. We'll give a couple more seconds here. All right, so majority of the people are saying .NET 5 support. Tablix Wizard is pretty popular as well. And then the table and Tablix are pretty popular next. Okay, so let's go ahead and yes, we have everybody 85% completed. So you can see .NET 5 is the first, and then Tablix Wizard is the next neat feature that you guys like, followed by the table creation and then the parameters and the filters panel. All right, so let's go ahead and hide this and continue with our presentation. So we're wrapping up essentially. Essentially, we just went over some of the features that are new in ActiveReports 15. When we end this session, when we end this webinar, you're going to get a short post-session survey. It's only 5 questions, multiple choice, so it'll take you less than a minute to answer, honestly. But it does provide a lot of great feedback for us. So, I would appreciate it if you take a minute to do that. We also do provide customized demos. So if anybody's looking for if they're interested in a customized one-on-one demo with myself and the team and your teams, you can schedule a demo at this link. You can always contact sales for the promotions that I mentioned. If you have any question about that promotion or just sales questions, you have the sales email here. And definitely take advantage of the promotion until the end of the month that's available. Then finally, we do want to sort of hear from you, give us feedback about not only about this presentation, but about the features that you've seen. If you have specific feature requests or component requests or bugs that you find, anything at all, we do want to engage with you. We do want to hear from you. So, send me an email, send the sales team an email, whatever it may be. We do appreciate the contact that we get with our end users. So with that said, I'm going to end and open it up for any questions that we may have. And I did forget to mention that towards the end of the day, or in the next towards the end of the week rather, we will be sending the recording for this webinar and the presentation and the samples to you guys and to all of the people that registered. So be on the lookout for that as well. So I will open it up for any questions that there may be. So if there are questions, feel free to write them out in the questions panel in GoToWebinar. Okay. Okay, so there was a question about reports containing scripts running on .NET 5 in a Linux hosted container, Docker container. So RDL and Page are not going to have a problem. The section reports are currently not supported on Linux, but you are able to deploy to Windows servers. So for Linux servers, Linux-based servers, you would need to use the Page and RDL reports. The other option, we do have plans to support section reports in Linux as well. That's coming up in our subsequent releases. So more to follow on that. Okay. The date for the release, actually the date for the release is next Wednesday, so a week from today. So it's going to be the 16th of December is when ActiveReports 15 will be released. Will the web features be available on forums? Dave, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like ASP.NET web forms or WinForms? In both cases, WinForms. Okay. No, these features are specific to the web designer, to the web-based report designer. However, if it is something that you specifically will benefit from, we can definitely take that up into consideration, consider it for including in the desktop designers as well. Okay. Okay, so very good. So upgrading for V11 to V15, Tyler already answered. There's really not many breaking changes between the two. The only major difference is that we are using NuGet packages and NPM packages for our assemblies. That is the major difference, essentially. Okay, Mike is asking, is it possible to migrate section reports to RDL? Yes, definitely. So we can send you the link to migrate your existing section reports to RDL reports. and page reports too, if that is needed. Yes, Mike, we will send you the link, but it is part of our documentation. Essentially, it is the import wizard. Yeah, the script portion is not going to be imported, Mike. In section reports, you can have scripts within the designer. Those are not going to be implemented. Those are not going to be migrated. You are able to use, for the majority of the case, we actually have a blog post on this, but basically changing those scripts to expressions. So we have a series of blog posts that we wrote on this particular case. So we can link that to you as well in a follow-up email. But to migrate a section report to RDL, there's an import wizard. Thanks, Tyler. The link is provided by Tyler in the answers section. Will the old V11 reports work under, or do we have to redesign them? No, Eddie, they will work. There isn't, again, there isn't any breaking changes. So especially with regards to the design, you will definitely have some new features in ActiveReports 15 that you don't have in, that you didn't have in V11. But the design that you have in 11, you would just convert it to ActiveReports 15 with the convert option in Visual Studio. That's pretty much it. Section report code base available in .NET Core. So code-based section reports will run, but like I mentioned, but there is a caveat that the designer doesn't show in ActiveReport in the Visual Studio. Inside Visual Studio, the integrated designer does not show there. And the workaround is to use the linked project that targets .NET Framework 4.6.2 or newer. Okay, so we're 2 minutes over time. If there are any questions, you have my email address. You will have my email address. I'll be sending out the deck that has my email address. If not, then I can post it in the chat here as well. So feel free to reach out to me personally if need be needed for anything at all. So I do thank you for taking the time to join the call and to listen in and to provide some feedback. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your participation. And I hope to catch you on in the next webinar that we have. Thank you guys, and have a good rest of the day.